Throughout history, there have been countless video game mascots that sadly only ever appeared in 1 or 2 games. Many characters have tried to become the next big platformer star, but when compared to the likes of Mario, Donkey Kong, and even Banjo-Kazooie, they never really stood a chance. As such, these platforming stars have often defined what a platformer is supposed to be, even to this day. And while there are still other newer characters that try to rise and match the old titans in hopes of joining their ranks, many of the more modern platformers try to do so by catering to a more hardcore audience. But then there's this little fox named Lucky who started a game that acted as an easy point of entry for newer fans. And today, we'll see if Lucky is worthy of that spotlight as I attempt to complete New Super Lucky's Tale.
Here comes a new challenger! Yes! Danger!
Perfect! Whew. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another brand new episode of The Completionist, where we don't just beat the games, we complete them. It has been a pretty difficult year here on the show for us. We have played a lot of big games, a lot of long games, a lot of difficult games overall. And I was going through my inbox of potential games to do on the show, and I got a code for a game called New Super Lucky's Tale. And I remember playing this game in VR many years ago, and it's coming out to the Nintendo Switch very soon. So I thought, you know what? Today, let's take a look at New Super Lucky's Tale for the Nintendo Switch. At first glance, New Super Lucky's Tale may just appear to be another generic game with a character that can jump and spin around. And sure, while those mechanics are present in the game, they weren't the game's main selling point. Instead, this game's main selling point would be that this is a game with a full-fledged and fun adventure for newbies. So rather than trying to appeal to hardcore fans of the platforming genre, New Super Lucky's Tale tries to appeal to younger audiences that may have never touched a video game before. By doing so, the game mixes in many great elements from other noteworthy platformer titles and combines them all to create a basic introduction for newer gamers. And by catering to newcomers, the end result is a simple journey with easy to complete tasks. And with this sense of direction, the game received decent reviews back when it was first released on the Xbox One. And so, following the likes of games such as Cuphead and Ori and the Blind Forest, Lucky recently made his way over to the Nintendo Switch. After all, if the game really wanted to appeal to newer and younger audiences, then what better way to do so than to expand the reach of your game by reimagining it on another platform? And of course, on the Xbox, the game was just called Super Lucky's Tale, rather than the current Nintendo Switch title of New Super Lucky's Tale. This Lucky guy must be feeling really confident about becoming the next big platformer star if he's gonna have the guts to put super and new in his title. But what makes this game so new anyway? Well, essentially, the Switch version of the game isn't just a straight up port of the Xbox One version. All DLC has become baseline within this version of the game, and there are some quality of life improvements, such as being able to freely rotate the camera in most levels. And with these additions and adjustments, I'm expecting an overall chill experience. The premise of the game is also pretty simple. We have Lucky, a fox, who must stop the mad sorcerer Jinx and his group of children known as the Kitty Litter. After Jinx tries to steal the Book of Ages, a hole opens up in the sky and sucks Lucky, the Kitty Litter, and all of the pages of the Book of Ages into it. And so it's up to Lucky to jump, dig, and tailspin through each level, collect all the missing book pages, and return home so we can stop Jinx and the Kitty Litter once and for all. To be blunt, New Super Lucky's Tale is the easiest platformer I've ever played. The game is incredibly straightforward, and any sort of side challenge in this game is hardly a challenge to complete. No part of the game ever tries to have a player master a mechanic or time a jump in just the right way. But it's clear that the game isn't trying to create levels that are difficult. Rather, it's trying to create a full-fledged game with levels that are diverse and sundry. Honestly, Super Lucky's Tale was so easy that it started to affect my enjoyment a little bit. But for the most part, I thoroughly enjoyed many of the level layouts and ideas being presented here. Sure, I might play platformers all the time, so one could argue that I'm pro at these types of games by now, but that shouldn't change the fact that those who are intimidated by the difficulty of a Donkey Kong Country game or the amount of collectibles in a Banjo game would feel more relaxed with this game serving as a sort of introductory course for new
newer players. So right off the bat, the game makes it very clear what type of trials lay before Lucky. After the opening cutscene, the game throws Lucky into the first level where there are 4 objectives to complete. The first objective is simply to get to the end of the level. Along the way, Lucky will come across a cast of colorful characters, including a male golem who loves to make puns, a wrestler that speaks in all caps known as the Penultimate Warrior, and a group known as the Soggy Boggy Boys who serve as a nice reference to Oh Brother Where Art Thou. Getting through each of these levels is as simple as merely jumping from block to block while avoiding hazards along the way, and every level is clearly laid out in front of you so you'll always know where to go and how to get through everything. And at the end of each stage is a page that showcases that you made it to the end of the level by having Lucky spin around and do a little dance. Way to go, you. Now, the second objective for each level has players looking for the letters L, U, C, K, and Y. The letters can be found in any order, and all in all, finding these 5 letters in each level isn't difficult. They're mainly there to allow the level to serve as more than just a random assortment of blocks. 1 or 2 letters are occasionally placed so that finding each one felt a bit rewarding. The third objective is a bit similar. Every stage has a secret hidden page on it. The locations of these pages are a bit more secretive than the Lucky letters are, and although these can sometimes be a tad more difficult to locate, they're generally not too tedious to collect. I preferred finding these a bit more than the Lucky letters since, well, they aren't as blatantly out in the open as the letters are. Technically speaking, you do need to be a bit better at platforming to locate some of these pages than any of the letters, but even then, you can probably guess what I'm going to say about collecting these things. Yeah. It's easy. And lastly, every level offers a reward for the players that collect 300 coins. Like in most games, coins generally serve a purpose in directing a player on where to go. And in new Super Lucky's Tale, there's no shortage of direction here. Just by playing a level and following a generic path of coins, I was able to collect about 100 coins. Collecting 300 coins is such a simple task to complete. And sometimes you might wind up finishing a level with nearly twice that amount without even thinking about it. So after beating a level, Lucky will be sent to the hub world, and from there, a player can either play a new level, take on a side mission that usually revolves around solving some sort of puzzle, or purchase unlockable outfits with the coins that were found in previous levels. This game allows players to take on almost any task in any order, and what's even more fascinating is that although each level typically has the same 4 completion objectives, the way each level plays out may be different. So I went into this game thinking it was going to be another simple 3D platformer, and after I played the first level, I had thought that my suspicions were confirmed. But then after selecting another level in the first world, I realized that this game incorporated many platforming elements beyond just the traditional 3D stuff. Now, this game had no problem with throwing me straight into a side-scroller level. If the 3D levels take inspiration from Banjo-Kazooie, then the 2D ones take inspiration from Donkey Kong Country. Lucky letters were laid out just like the Kong letters, and the hidden page on each level was similar to finding a secret door or special route. And throughout these stages, the idea of locating certain collectibles in the levels still feel pretty rewarding. It was nice to know that I could start a level, and then rather than immediately heading to the right like I would in any other game, I could go left and immediately find some coins. But the other levels, just in the first world alone, were quite varied as well. One level had me carry a character's head around, which led me to having to traverse through a level without the ability to jump. Another level was an auto runner, so the only thing I really could do was jump. And even when I began to think, okay, maybe every world has just these 4 levels, the game constantly mixed things up and even had levels that would start out as one style and end in another. And I gotta imagine that if I was surprised by the variety here, then a newcomer would have to be at least just as surprised as me. But despite the genre changes across each level, each stage is just as easy to complete as any other level. The same types of obstacles will still show up in every stage, and all that really changes between the 2D and the 3D levels is how restrictive your camera controls are. There aren't any enemies that are more difficult to defeat in a side-scrolling level than in a free-roaming one, and you can still traverse through any of the levels at your own pace. This is all aided by the fact that none of the stages feature a timer. Although there might be miniature things in each level that might be based on time, such as collecting about 10 or so coins in about 15 seconds, I was able to go through each level on my own leisurely pace. And so, when I would switch from a large exploratory segment to a segment that heavily revolved around precise jumping, I was never really frustrated because I was never truly in a rush. This made the game feel much more refreshing to play. Rather than just going through a dozen or so levels and treating everything as a generic collectathon, the game kept me guessing with what type of level would show up next. And beyond all this, there were also traditional side levels with fun objectives that utilized different gameplay mechanics. I guess these would be better categorized as miniature puzzles than levels, but still, there's no time limit, and they mix up the gameplay, and they're fun. So the best way that I can describe these puzzles are as ice puzzles and marble puzzles. While the ice puzzles don't actually have ice in them, they revolve around sliding objects around into certain slots. These were usually pretty easy to solve, and even if I made a mistake, it was very easy to reset the puzzle and try again. And although these so-called ice puzzles definitely had me thinking later on in the game, it only took me about a minute or two to solve each puzzle at most. But then there's these marble puzzles, right? These aren't as fun, but on the bright side, they're still short and simplistic. In these stages, Lucky is minimized and placed into a marble. Then, much in line with something like Marble Madness, the goal is to roll Lucky around a board toward an endpoint while collecting coins along the way. Each time I played through these little side missions, I was just wishing to go back into something more platforming related. Upon beating the main portion of the game, you'll unlock the bonus world known as Foxington. To bring us back to the introductory course analogy that I made earlier, Foxington serves as a bit of a final exam for anyone that may be interested in tackling a more challenging game after this one. This area is broken up into 3 distinct portions that challenge different aspects of the game. We have the mobility levels that test your movement capabilities. These levels are best comparable to that of Champions Road from Super Mario 3D World, although I still only died here no more than 10 times at most. Each level removes the need to fulfill 4 requirements by finding collectibles and instead just focuses on straight up platforming. The only collectible on each level is a bucket of hot dogs, but because I wasn't constantly on the lookout for any other item, I just breezed through each of these vaporwave style levels. Next, we have the combat section. Here, you'll have to face off against bosses that you faced during the game, but now they're all metal and shiny. Ooh, shiny. These fights are a tad bit more difficult than they were in the base game, but I was still able to take them down lickety-split. And finally, you have the mental exam? At least I think that was what this was supposed to represent. Essentially, it's just more marble minigames, but this time they change up how some of the levels work. For example, one of the stages is based off a pachinko machine, and a few other stages mess around with varying heights and traps. I gotta say, if the entire game had started at the difficulty that these levels represented, I probably would have enjoyed myself a bit more during my time completing this game. However, I do respect the way that Playful Studios assembled this game. It is a nice journey from learning the basics to a final challenging world that gears the player up to tackle more platforming adventures. Much like how Miyazaki has the right to create a challenging game like Dark Souls, Lucky's Tale is perfectly within its own rights to be a game that doesn't stress out the player. And once again, if you do find new Super Lucky's Tales challenging, that's okay. We all play games at our own speed. You dig? The most charming thing about the game was the fact that I was able to unlock additional costumes for Lucky each time I beat a level. They look nice, and some costumes even gave me a quick chuckle, but it's a real shame the developers didn't go all out with some of these designs. And maybe some of these costumes could have given me some new abilities, but for the time being, there was no real reason to use any of the costumes that don't utilize a cool pair of shades. Okay, well, there is a pretty funny hot dog vendor costume that you can get toward the end of the game, and this might actually be the best one of them all. Hot dogs, get your hot dogs here, get them while they're hot. Given how many collectibles there are in New Super Lucky's Tale, it's a bit of a shame that there aren't actually that many things that can be unlocked. Aside from some costumes, there's no real incentive to collect every single thing in the game other than mere bragging rights. Once I beat all of the stages in the game, I was treated to a bonus cutscene that I guess is setting up things for a sequel to the game, but other than that, I did everything in the game, and I didn't get much for doing so. All of the levels will say that I collected every page or every hot dog bucket, and yet I don't really feel like there was any real compelling reason to do any of this. You only need to collect a specific number of pages to beat the game anyway, so I don't really see why it may be worth it to anybody to collect them all. It's honestly a shame, really, since I fear that this may just discourage newer players from ever truly completing a game, unless the only true reward for collecting every collectible is a sense of semi-satisfaction. But if this is your first platformer, or you're more of a casual gamer, or even if you just like to explore pretty and fun environments, New Super Lucky's Tale has a lot of value going for it. And as someone who's a bit of a hardcore gamer, I appreciate the approach and understanding of New Super Lucky's Tale and its appeal to younger audiences and families alike. While I completed New Super Lucky's Tale, there were 12 deaths, with most of these taking place on the Foxington bonus levels, but overall, death was rarely an issue. 6 worlds conquered, with every page located and every side challenge completed. 16 outfits unlocked. It's cool that you can customize Lucky's appearance and all, but I still wish that maybe these outfits could have added a little extra ability or something. 9 hours of total playtime, and one fox that can truly be a hot dog vendor. Hot dogs, get your hot dogs, get them while they're hot.
You know, in the current landscape of how we've been receiving games all the time, I think there's been a shift in the landscape where we're getting a lot more difficult games. Ones that require precision and perfection and style. And it's nice to play a game like New Super Lucky's Tale because it's a great way to go the opposite direction, right? A game where it's colorful, it's vibrant, it's easy for everyone to play in the family. You know, it's good for friends, it's good for kids, it's good for really anyone who hasn't played a video game in quite some time. Or even if it's your first video game, it's a great way to start. And in the end, I think it's one of those games where there's no stress to it. There's just fun. And I think that's something to take a look at and go, yeah, we all could use a little fun in our lives in that way. When it comes to completing this game, it's relatively straightforward and a fun time, but in the end, you don't really get anything for your time investment. Luckily, the game's not too big in that regard, so you don't feel bad about the investment, but it would be a little bit nicer to receive something for your completion laurels. So, with that in mind, guys, I give this game my completionist rating of finish it.
Finish it!
That's all time we have for today, guys. So please, as always, let me know what you thought about today's episode somewhere on the internet. Guys, if you like the show, do me a favor, hit that like button, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you want to see here on the future of the show. And hey, if you like the show and you want to keep it going, you can head over to patreon.com/completionist and support us there. It's a great way to keep us going. We got some good stuff going on there. Soon a podcast, some other fun things too. It's a good time. Guys, I've been Gerard the Completionist, and I'll see you next week for the brand new episode. Bye.